you all see my?
Yes, we can.
Great. Well, yeah, thanks for the introduction, Arturus, and good afternoon to everybody. Also very happy to be invited to give this presentation at the NEST seminar. I'm part of the SDIN community for about a decade now. Yeah, so I'm really happy to give my perspective and share the research that I have been doing in the past 10 years. As Arturo mentioned, my research looks in particular at the innovation of governance for transformative. So I look specifically at the topic of transformative adaptation to climate change in cities. In my PhD, I have worked with the concept of transformative urban governance as an alternative way to look at the planning and policy making in cities, which is more explicitly oriented towards steering sustainability transitions. And yeah, so today I will talk about what I mean with that, with transformative urban governance, and especially how working with a lot of cities, especially in Europe, but also in the US and Africa and India, how I see it emerging in form of governance capacities. So my main starting point, of course, is that sustainability problems in cities are complex and uncertain. I guess that's nothing new for anybody, especially working in the sustainability transitions field. But so for me, the deeper challenge that I'm particularly interested in is that existing urban governance and how it is set up is unable to address these characteristics of complexity and uncertainty of contemporary sustainability problems. That is why we need a new approach to governance, namely transformative governance. And I will say a bit more about what this is in a minute. But then there's again a deeper challenge because transformative governance requires the policymakers and planners, decision makers in cities to develop new skills, new decision-making procedures, new partnerships, that they are not, because it's a different way of approaching decision-making that they're used to. And this is what I look at in terms of capacities for transformative governance. So I will talk also a bit about what these are and especially how I see these developing in cities. So again, my main starting point is that climate action or action on sustainability transitions more broadly is largely ineffective at the moment because existing urban governance is not able to address complex problems like climate change. If this were a more interactive format of a lecture, I would ask you what governance shortcomings you recognize from these cartoons. But what I mainly want to show is that approaches to make decisions and implement actions are often still very short-term oriented. They aim to maximize profits or short-term political goals to be re-elected. And they often in that also fail to address the root causes of the problems actually by simply optimizing business as usual, what we already have. And to illustrate what this means specifically then in the context of cities and the challenges that cities face, I want to give a few examples. So right now I'm doing research in Cape Town in South Africa, which has faced in about 2017 to 2018 a severe water crisis that was caused by a 3-year drought. And it put the city at risk of almost running out of water entirely. Since then, this severe situation has mitigated somewhat, but of course, water scarcity in the region is continuing to cause problems. The city of Cape Town is developing various programs to support resilient water supply in the city. But at the same time, while doing so, the city is faced with a continuous energy crisis that is taking place in the whole of South Africa, with energy blackouts across the whole country every day. So every day there are several hours of no energy, and you can see on the picture on the right here what this means, that basically whole blocks are completely black, because there's no energy. And of course, then there's also no energy for water infrastructure. So there's no energy to pump water, to treat water, to distribute water. And then when thinking especially of also the initiatives that the city is putting in place to enhance resilient water supply, such as desalination or groundwater abstraction or wastewater reuse, all of these require more energy even than current water infrastructures do. So this is to illustrate that there's a need for both cross-departmental and cross-sectoral collaboration to address the water challenges, as well as also across various levels of government. And this is not something that is given. So this is really challenging for the city to deal with. Another example is, I guess it's also a relatively well-known example now concerning greening initiatives. This is on the slide, you see the example of the High Line in New York City, which was an old train track that was transformed into an urban park. And such greening initiatives obviously offer a lot of benefits for climate adaptation. They protect from floods, they also provide a shared community space, they mitigate heat island effect, they support biodiversity protection, mental health, and so forth. But at the same time, it has shown that the High Line, as well as unfortunately also many other cities around the world, that this contributes to the gentrification of the neighborhood, and many so it made housing unaffordable for many of the residents who were forced to move out of the city center. Another example is, famous example, I believe, is especially Barcelona. So this is to show that even measures to adapt to climate change can also have negative unintended consequences on other policy priorities or other sectors. So basically what this illustrates is that there's a mismatch between, on the one hand, the characteristics of urban transformation, and on the other hand, the characteristics of existing urban governance that do not match the realities of urban transformations. So because they tend to focus on more efficiency and short-term actions to optimize the existing situations and control what we have, essentially. And rethinking that to think of what it would mean for a more transformative approach to governance, basically what we did is to look at these characteristics of urban transformations in terms of their complexity, that they're really long-term processes of change, that there are high path dependencies involved, they're highly uncertain and contested. What would this mean, and what are implications for urban governance to be more transformative and to be able to actually steer and navigate into these transformation dynamics? So we can identify several principles for urban governance to really take a more integrative, systemic approach to developing solutions and strategies that really look at synergies and trade-offs across various sectors, across also various scales and geographies, that take an explicitly long-term orientation to guide the development of short-term and medium-term actions, and kind of make sure that all the puzzle pieces fit together. There's a need to specifically facilitate innovation, not just optimization to overcome path dependencies, and to foster continuous learning and also the involvement of diverse actors. And there are, of course, various governance frameworks that have been already developed and put forth to support the governance of sustainability transitions. I suppose that many of you are familiar with the transition management approach that was developed by DRIFT, the Dutch Research Institute for Transitions in Rotterdam, where I worked many years before moving to Utrecht University. And this is basically a governance approach that includes specific types of measures that are needed to approach sustainability transitions, by including a system analysis, developing a long-term vision, and creating space for experimentation. And in that, so these activities also are meant to create a different arena for decision making. So it's not only about the interventions, it's also really about the process around these interventions. Building on this, then several years later, Dirk Lorbach, the director from Drift, who's also pioneered the transition management approach, has developed the so-called X curve, which emphasizes that when trying to understand but also play into sustainability transitions, we don't need to only focus on experimentation and institutionalizing a more sustainable alternatives. It is also about supporting the destabilization and breakdown of existing unsustainable path dependencies. And this already gives an idea of that it's necessary when we want to strategically guide and play into sustainability transitions, that we need to be able to recognize the various transformation dynamics that take place over the course of a transformation. You may wonder why I also put resilience frameworks and relating to adaptive governance on this slide. It is because, especially when looking at climate change, we also need to consider that there are continuous uncertainties, there are risks and surprises that take place that we need to facilitate self-organization and adaptation to maintain important system functions. So it's not only about experimentation and destabilization, it's also about facilitating adaptation and maintaining of what is important to us, what we want to keep. And I have used this to develop a framework of 4 transformative governance functions and associated capacities that essentially identify the various forms of transformation dynamics that we need to recognize, mobilize, and shape when we want to steer sustainability transformations. The first one is unlocking. So it's about eliminating drivers of unsustainability. That resonates the downward curve of the X curve. Then we need transforming, which is about innovating and embedding new ways of thinking, doing, and organizing. I have added especially from the resilience thinking, the stewarding function to anticipate, protect, and recover from impacts and surprises, as well as the more overarching sort of meta function that looks at all of the dynamics together, as well as synergies and trade-offs occurring across sectors, scales, and time. So it gives this specific emphasis on the need to coordinate towards long-term perspectives. But so rather than dwelling a lot on the theory, which scholars in general, and especially transition scholars, we love to do, I want to talk about mainly what I learned from applying this framework and general thinking of transformative urban governance from cities. And in that, I understand, so it's in the transitions community, we talk a lot about experimentation and grassroots innovation. I understand experimentation as a way of not only trying out new and place-based solutions, it is for me also basically a form of governance experimentation. So in the development of new solutions, such as nature-based solutions, for example, that we also try out new collaborative and iterative processes of making decisions to involve local communities, to facilitate a different trial and error way of making decisions. However, what is important to keep in mind is that this experimentation is extremely demanding and challenging for especially the policy officers and policymakers that try to do that engage in the development of innovative solutions. And this is again because this way of governing is a very different approach to the existing form of governance. So that by doing that, it clashes a lot with the conventional way of working within city governments. For example, urban policymakers and planners are not used to collaborating, neither amongst each others when they come from different departments, nor with citizens. And often those who should be engaged may perceive it as a waste of time, but also existing rules like tendering procedures do not provide room for co-creation and collaboration. And the same also goes for more long-term and open-ended approaches to encourage new knowledge, problem framings, and solution to emerge rather than to predefine them, because this requires some letting go of control, while existing ways of working really ask policymakers and practitioners to basically predefine what they're going to do and to act quickly and only to evaluate their solutions and what they did and the effects of that afterwards. And this is where I then position what I call the transformative governance capacity loop, that helps essentially to conceive of this interaction between trying out something new and experimenting with a new form of governance and interacting with the existing business as usual way of governance. So it starts with experimentation as a mechanism to try new solutions, but also in that new institutions, relations, and knowledge. And in doing so, the actors involved in experimentation, they essentially interact with and unpack the urban complexity that they are encountering. So they will encounter various barriers and opportunities that influence what they can do, what is possible, but they will also proactively intervene in and change their context to overcome the barriers and mobilize opportunities. And this then contributes to institutional learning as well. So they will develop new skills, new knowledge, new partnerships, rules, and so forth, which in turn provide new conditions for more transformative urban governance that then become means to implement transformative urban agendas more broadly. So, for example, it helps to replicate and scale innovations, but also it's also possible, and I've seen that these new conditions that were created become embedded and translated into other policy programs. So beyond the one solution that was experimented with. So for me, this perspective on transformative urban governance capacity really focuses on the one hand on the activities, on the actors and the activities that they are engaging in to interact with their institutional context when developing innovative solutions, as well as the conditions and mechanisms that then facilitate a different form of urban governance that is needed to support urban sustainability transformation. And for me, what I find really interesting about this is that it helps to address different questions about experimentation, specifically about how to not only develop, but also how to embed this new forms of governance in existing and arguably outdated administrative policy and planning frameworks and procedures, and then to really make them an integral part of urban governance. And I will now highlight three main lessons that I saw from various research projects that I did in and also together with cities on how this form of urban governance experimentation supported the development of urban transformative capacity and what kind of mechanisms there were behind it. The first lesson is about the institutionalization of systemic goals and approaches that are necessary to provide a reliable framework for more integrated governance across institutional silos, priorities, and agendas. And that is, again, especially necessary because existing urban governance is generally characterized by sectoral silos that then also translate into narrow and fragmented priorities and, for instance, also financing frameworks. So I've looked, for instance, at the various resilience, sustainability, and climate adaptation strategies and policies that were developed in Rotterdam and New York City. And for me, these mark a form of experimentation with new visions. And this was really important because they tie together various goals. For instance, one NYC in New York City ties together goals to reduce emissions, to improve air quality, to adapt to climate change, to build resilient communities, and to ensure affordable housing by 2050. And this then enables to guide the prioritization of more short-term actions, as well as also cross-sectoral collaboration. And here it was very important that these strategies, they were not just developed in a top-down manner, but they were developed in a very co-creative approach, including actors from different city departments, as well as also different urban communities. And in that sense, this also created more ownership over the shared goals and more understanding of, okay, so how can we actually collaborate together? For instance, in New York City, the involvement of the Parks and Recreation Department and the Department of Buildings then led to making the planting of street trees a requirement for any new building development in the city. And what was also interesting, that these visions were translated into new organizational structures in the city. So they have developed sustainability offices and climate adaptation or climate resilience offices that sit so in the hierarchical structure of the city government, that sit across various departments, and this enables them to ensure and oversee progress and the impacts of climate initiatives, and to build connections and develop partnerships across different departments to distribute knowledge and to identify synergies for, okay, so where can we collaborate also with the financial resources that we have. And something that was very especially high profiled back then was there was the 100 Resilient Cities program by the Rockefeller Foundation, and they supported the institutionalization of chief resilience officers. So one specific person within the city government that has the formal mandate as well to ensure that climate change and resilience considerations are integrated into all policy and planning processes. Another example for institutionalizing systemic goals and approaches are from the Connecting Nature project. In this project, we work together with urban planners and policy officers from 10 European cities to develop and scale nature-based solutions. And at the start of the project, the cities created narratives about how their nature-based solution contributes to broader social, political, and business goals in their city. So it's interesting here that the approach was basically the other way around. It was not starting from a broad strategy. It was really starting from one specific solution, but making sure that and clarifying that this solution has multiple benefits, and as such links to various goals the city is pursuing across different departments and initiatives. And this then helps to gain support from politicians, from the mayor, from senior decision makers, and to establish links essentially between different policy and planning initiatives. For example, in Glasgow, in Scotland, the UK, they have then, based on their nature-based solutions, they have developed an open space strategy and identified explicit connection to other action plans and strategies they have in the city, such as the local biodiversity plan, food growing strategy, even sports pitch strategy and education. And in that, they make sure basically, and they clarify that implementing and having a view on nature-based solution is relevant across their many different programs. And in this sense, they ensure that the idea of and the thinking about nature-based solutions and urban greening is mainstreamed across and safeguarded across many different initiatives of the city. Second lesson I want to highlight is about institutionalizing inclusive and durable co-creation. So it's also very common knowledge now that collaborative governance approaches are a key mechanism to experimentation in order to activate a wide range of knowledge and needs and resources, and really also make sure that that the innovative solutions are both inclusive as well as also integrated into the urban specific context and the specific neighborhoods where they're being implemented. At the same time, now there's also increasing recognition that co-creation is necessary not only for the development and implementation of innovative solutions, but also for the long-term continuity of such experiments, for example, to facilitate the use, care, maintenance, and stewardship. So it's also about thinking of co-creation in a much more long-term way, and facilitating that it's actually something that becomes a new governance approach rather than one-time intervention, for instance. And again, in the Connecting Nature project, the urban planners and policy officers that were involved, they conducted diverse co-creation processes to engage different urban actors in the development of their nature-based solution. And what was very interesting here to see is that again, it was not just one co-creation process, but it was really a variety of different processes. For instance, to engage children and school kids in competitions to design specific solutions that would benefit their target group. Another example is to engage various community organizations in outreaching initiatives. So there are a lot of different types of co-creation interventions that can be connected to specific innovation development. And from the perspective of capacity development, what was striking that at the beginning, most of the city teams that we worked with, they struggled with this collaborative approaches because they felt that they lacked the experience, the knowledge, and the skills to facilitate and design co-creation. They didn't really know how to identify and reach out to citizens, for instance. And they also faced a lot of barriers because colleagues, they perceived it as a waste of time, and a lot of existing regulatory conditions did not allow them to integrate co-creation, which takes more time, and also different kind of financing. They really struggled with making this possible. But at the end, so after this experience, the involved policymakers stated that that they have learned new skills, knowledge, and also organizational processes on how to do co-creation, and this made them more confident to engage in co-creation in the future, and also to sustain various forms of collaborative approaches, because they also saw that this engagement makes the nature-based solutions that they have developed much more valuable for the local communities. And for example, the city of Genk has integrated this way of collaborating and co-creation with different urban communities into their organizational way of working. They integrated co-creation as a principle in all aspects of the implementation of the nature-based solution, but also in other policy programs. So they said, okay, so whatever we do, if we want to do something on mobility or energy, we need to integrate co-creation into that. And they also hired a new colleague in the city government with specific co-creation skills. So somebody who is actually tasked with only working on co-creation, only on engaging local communities in the initiatives that the city is undertaking. There is also, so when thinking of transition management that I mentioned before, transition management is essentially about creating this arena for so-called front runners to come together. So that it's about inviting various actors in the city that work on sustainability initiatives, and engaging them in a shared process to understand the problem from a systemic perspective, to identify a long-term vision, and to co-develop experiments. And this was, so drawing on a project that I was involved in, where we implemented transition management in 5 cities in Europe. This was very valuable to, on the one hand, bring different perspectives together and also create a shared sense of purpose and exchange perspectives, but also to facilitate new collaborations, both between citizens and the city government, but also amongst the front runners themselves. So they have collaborated and identified various forms of follow-up initiatives that they wanted to engage in to make their city better. For instance, the carrot mob, or they organized a university-wide transition, and various initiatives. What I want to mention here is that it's very important to consider this aspect of empowerment and disempowerment. I already mentioned that bringing various actors together in a co-creation process can be very empowering, because it helps them to see from other perspectives. It helps them to see that others also care like they do about the sustainability in their city. It helps them to discover specific assets and identities of their community. It can also help them to see where they can go to, if they have a specific question, or if they have a specific idea for a project. But it can also lead to disempowerment. So not doing co-creation in a good way risks that citizens feel overwhelmed. They also invest a lot of time in it, so they might not feel they might not be willing to engage in co-creation processes in the future. And it also raises a lot of questions in terms of responsibility. So is it to what extent should citizens actually be made responsible to actively engage in making the city a better place, and to what extent is it the role of, and should it stay also the role of, the city government to do that and to provide support in various ways. The last lesson I want to highlight was very special to the Connecting Nature project, and it refers to institutionalizing reflexivity. In general, so experimentation is all about learning. It's about interacting with the urban context and understanding emergent needs and barriers and opportunities. And we thought this is also something that requires a specific governance approach and specific attention in the processes of developing innovations. So in the Connecting Nature project, we have worked with reflexive monitoring as a specific method. So it provides a specific method to support the cities to create space, regular space, to step back from their day-to-day activities and reflect on what they're doing, what barriers they face, what opportunities are emerging, how their progress so far links to their long-term ambitions and goals, and what sort of adaptations are necessary. And initially, the cities, again, were very skeptical of the value of this approach, because it was quite different from the usual way of working. They were really in the action doing mindset, and yeah, but we don't have time to actually step back and just think about how our process is doing. We're doing it fine. But eventually they became more used to it and comfortable, and appreciated and embraced it very much. And some cities even mentioned this was the holy grail of the whole project and all the interventions that we did with the cities, because they felt that it helped them to be much more proactive in how they're interacting with their context and how they're developing their solutions. And it allowed them to anticipate possible problems, but also to be very strategic in what the actions that they would take, saying like, okay, we need to have an external meeting to talk to people from this other department, for instance. And they also, as a result of this recognition, they also institutionalized reflexive monitoring as an additional method to their regular project management activities. And so they made it kind of a conventional method also in other programs that they're developing. And also in the nature-based solutions themselves, they broadened it up, and they, for instance, in the city of Genk in Belgium, they organize every 6 months a 2-day so-called conclave involving other departments, but also involving local communities in reflecting on, okay, so where are we? How is it going with the nature-based solution? Do we want to change anything in how we manage it? Do we need to pay attention to involving new actors, or do we want to change something in the design and so forth? So I essentially wanted to share my story on how I see transformative governance in cities developing. I think it's especially a story, or what I want to emphasize is that it's especially a story of many small things, small changes and activities that are taking place, and which in the end become a drive for more deeper institutional change. It is a lot about generating excitement, changing perspectives, building trust, building new connections and partnerships. And what I think is especially notable is the motivation and engagement and drive of very much individual actors who are very tireless to invest in alliances, to invest in building trust, to showcase new strategies, to showcase pilots, practices, to bridge across different agendas and networks, to develop new partnerships, to identify what skills and expertise they need, and how they could mobilize this. So it's a lot on really individuals, and that is also leading me to some words of caution about and questions that I have about the future of this this progress on governance experimentation. In all cities that I studied and worked with and learned with together, there are still many limitations with this type of institutional learning. So many barriers persist, especially when they refer to regulatory issues that also require interventions from higher levels of government. A lot of barriers exist in attracting enough financial resources. Departmental silos prove very difficult to overcome, so it is mainly often limited to individual relationships and based on trust. And also this issue of that it's very much dependent on individual actors remains a problem. So there's a lot of change happening. But my main question is that I would also invite you to think about is to what extent does this approach help to move beyond incrementalism and really help to support more radical and also fast institutional change that we need when we think of the urgency of sustainability problems that we're facing in cities around the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Katharina, for this